So if Superintendent Williams joins, then we'll 5 minutes. Point we will kick off. Thank you for coming today, and let's hope we'll have seek to explore what multi-factor authentication is and what it means for security.
Recording stopped. Recording
Okay,
in
so
progress.
welcome back. I've had to switch locations because the sound from the other location was not coming through as it should. And so for now, I will be using this platform. I am Lieutenant Colonel Godfrey Sterling, the head of the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team. And I want to thank those of you who have joined us here on the virtual platform, as well as those who are attendees and those joining on the streaming platforms that we're using. Today, as we seek to continue our daily lives amidst the new normal that has been foisted upon us by the pandemic, the throes of which we're still gripped in. Multi-factor authentication is deemed to be one of the ways in which we can seek to manage the security of the many accounts and platforms that we have to interact with on a daily basis. As such, we deemed it a timely intervention to invite today to speak about the topic Deputy Superintendent of Police Warren Williams, Ms. Cherie Smith, and Mrs. Could you pronounce your surname for me, ma'am?
Sure, it's Chotkan. So it's Kiana Chotkan.
Chotkan.
That's
and
correct.
Kiana Chotkan. The topic is one that really ought to hold significant importance for all who seek to use cyberspace and have multiple accounts. It would be remiss of me to try to tell you about the storied careers of these persons. And as such, I would invite each one to take a moment to tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do in their daily lives to ensure that you can have a more secure cyber experience. We start with Miss Cherie Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Special Agent Cherie Smith at the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, assigned to the Cyber Investigations and Risk Management Unit. Multi-factor authentication, I hope everyone integrates it in their daily usage in cyberspace, as Mr. Sterling said. It's something that we should be used to in our emails, on our work computers, on our accounts. So I hope that we get to delve into it today and really explain why it's significant, especially nowadays.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We now move to Mrs. Shotkan. I hope I'm not butchering your name, ma'am.
That's okay. So good afternoon, guys. I am Special Agent Kiana Chotkan at the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency. I am assigned to the Cyber Investigation and Risk Management Unit as the Cyber Forensic Examiner. I obtained a bachelor's degree in applied science at the University of Technology, and I've done training in cybersecurity and system and network administration. I'm looking forward to this discussion today. As my colleague stated, multi-factor authentication should be one of the most important implementations in today's society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Colonel, I hope you are now inviting me because we didn't get the last part of your conversation. We seem to have lost you, but I am supposing that you are asking me to speak. Nevertheless, I will do that. Warren Williams is my name. I'm a Deputy Superintendent, part of the team at the Communication Forensics and Cybercrime Division, which is on the CTOC. Of course, as the name depicts, we are involved in providing technical support for investigators internally and externally to advance their investigation. And of course, whatever support we can provide to assist the investigation, multi-factor authentication is in fact a part of our reminders to users that it's important in this day and age as we seek to have a more secure digital space. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, DSP. And, you know, it is sometimes very difficult for us to find the time to pay attention to things like this. And one of the challenges that we face as we seek to manage our presence online is that we get so bogged down in trying to just remember passwords, trying to remember which password is for what platform, and all of this. This level of confusion sometimes affects not only the young, the elderly, but some of us able bodied persons. And so I'm going to invite each of the panelists to take 5 to 10 minutes to just talk about multi factor authentication from their perspective. And then hopefully we can open up the floor for a discussion segment. I will again start with Ms. Smith and we go through the panels.
Okay, great. Um, as the Lieutenant Colonel just said, we have an issue nowadays. We use so many platforms. I was reading something recently that said the average person has about 26 accounts online on different platforms, and it gets tiring. Remembering all those passwords and maintaining our password manager. And that's one of the reasons that using multi-factor authentication is it's extremely important. What it is so authentication is just identifying that a person that's trying to use a service, trying to use an account is indeed who they say they are. So multi-factor authentication is using different identifiers to say that this is indeed the person that's supposed to be accessing this service. So with that said, just having your credentials, your username and your password, that's not sufficient nowadays because with data breaches, those are the things that they go for, your credentials. And if we use multiple across different platforms, they can access a lot of your accounts. So using multi-factor authentication, we'll go in with our usernames and our passwords, but then there's an added layer of security. And that is what multi-factor authentication provides for us. It's a layered approach to securing our accounts, our online accounts. So there are different ways we can use so we know what we know, our knowledge. So our usernames, our passwords, and then we can use something that we have. For example, I think a lot of us know different, like the app Secure ID that NCB uses, and that's a token. So that is something that we have on one of our devices. And then there are different services that we may use something that we are. So and when I say something that we are, I'm speaking of some biometric data. So are we using our face log, our face identification? Are we using our fingerprints? Just some information that is inherent about us, and that's the inherence. So multi-factor authentication really is just using added layers. So we're not just using a username and a password to get to our online accounts. And it may not be just from logging in, because there are different services that we might be using on different accounts that will require different steps of authentication. Again, using our financial systems or banking platforms, there are different ones where we want to initiate some form of transaction and it requires another layer of security. So we'll need a token or we'll need a PIN. And this is important because when attackers, or as we call them in the cybersecurity world, threat actors, when they try to gain access to our accounts, they might go through one layer. So they've socially engineered us, or they've done some breach and they have our usernames and they have our passwords and they get into our system. Again, going with the financial institution example, they may be able to view our transactions with just that layer. But with the added multi-factor authentication within our accounts, they won't be able to initiate any form of transaction. So that drives home why it's important to use different forms of of authentication within our systems, within our accounts online. And yes, we spoke of the different ways. You have your biometrics security questions. We have our one-time passwords and any form of code that we might be sent. Yes, that's in a nutshell what it is and how we use it nowadays with the example I gave in our financial institutions. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we're unable to hear. The audio was poor.
Are you hearing me now?
Just a little better.
All right, so we will try to fix that while the next speaker comes on. But the point I was making was about the layered approach that you spoke to, as well as the different identifiers that multi-factor authentication allows for a person to use as they seek to secure their online presence. So we move to Mrs. Shotkan, and we take her perspective as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sterling. So my colleague has delved into what it is, and uh, I just want to reiterate the importance of multi-factor authentication. As she mentioned, it provides an extra layer of security. So when the threat actors gain access to whatever you use it for, whether it's your account, whether it is to access your building, your work site, when the threat actor gain access to that, there's another layer of security that they will have to attend to before they get to whatever they are trying to access, whether it's, as I said, it could be your bank account, it could be data from your organization, etc. Now, what are some of the multi-factor authentication methods that we can use? We mentioned biometrics. So this can be your fingerprint, this can be facial recognition, voice recognition. It's it relies on the biometric for that purpose. We have push to approve notifications. I think this is one of the notifications that Google uses nowadays. It is a notification on a device that asks you or asks the user to approve the request for access to to the accounts by tapping a number or tapping yes it is me or something of that sort. We also have a one-time password. So this is where uh, a password is automatically generated, but it could be a series of alphanumeric characters. It is generated and it is sent to the user, and it tells you keep it safe. So when you are doing a transaction,